Welcome into another episode of the Inside Voice podcast. It's Jess. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving this a listen. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you're a first-time viewer, welcome. So glad that you are here. We always start off our podcast with some good news. As somebody who works in broadcast, I get sick of the if it bleeds, it leads narrative where people like to start with like the gloom and doom thinking it's going to hook people. I think people want the good news these days. So we're going to start with something good. There is a woman, 47 years old, who just went back to school, went to law school, got her law degree, and now owns her own firm. 47 years old. I got to tell you, so many people say that there's a certain age that you reach, and for so many it's 30, that like if you don't do all the things, achieve all your dreams by 30, then you're a failure. But this woman decided to change her stars, if you will. I just watched the movie A Knight's Tale, Change Your Stars. But her name is Abigail Seymour, and she has quite an interesting story. She actually went to school in New York for photography, had a career as a photographer. Then she ended up in Spain teaching English and went to law school to get her law degree, like I said, just a few years before she turned 50, when so many people would say like, just coast through the rest of life. Where you're at is where you're at, and that's it. What I find most interesting here is not only that she did it, she started her own law firm, and it's incredible that she decided to do this, quote unquote, when people think that it's late in life. But what I also love is that in the article that I was reading, it said that she actually failed the bar exam twice. And still pushed through, got out of her comfort zone and made it happen. In the article, it said that she went to therapy after failing it the second time, thinking that her therapist was going to be like, oh, it's okay. You know, if you decide to just quit and not do it and focus on yourself, that's totally fine. Because in the midst of going to law school, she was also, like raising her children. Her therapist was like, no, your happiness is on the other side of your comfort. And if it's what you want, go for it. And I absolutely love that. That really ties into what we're talking about today. We are continuing on in our series, You're Lying to Yourself, dismantling the biggest lies that we tend to tell ourselves, the biggest lies that we tend to believe in our mind. And as we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, there's a problem with allowing ourselves to dwell on things that are not true, allowing ourselves to dwell on things that are negative even. And before you write this off as a series of, oh, positive thinking, fluffy stuff. No, this is like legitimate stuff. What you think about over and over and over again eventually becomes your life. And this isn't manifesting. This is just the way that your brain works. If you think about something enough, your brain starts to create these neural pathways to get you to that thought faster. Your brain wants to run on efficiency. It wants to operate at optimal speed. So if you are telling it something over and over and over again, it's going to start to believe it because your brain doesn't know what's true and what's not. All it knows is what you tell it, what you dwell on, what you continue to think about. So if you continue to think about negative things, lies about yourself, you're ultimately going to train your brain to think that way in the future, to get to that thought faster. And ultimately, that affects the way that you live, that affects the decisions that you're making in your life, and that ultimately will dictate where you end up in your life. Suddenly we're thinking about the things we're thinking about, aren't we? I mean, this has been heavy on me. I think the Lord has actually been telling me to think about what I'm thinking about more often. And this is such a good refresher. I know that we hear this all the time, but you can't always believe everything that you think. And we've been using this analogy over the last couple of weeks of a train station. Your brain is a train station. The trains are thoughts. They're coming into the station, and you can either choose to get on that train or let it continue to pass through. If you get on the train, however, you're going to go wherever it takes you. Be careful where the train takes you. I tell the story all the time that when I first moved to New York City, I was living in Brooklyn, and I remember I had to go to class because I was in college, and I took the train the wrong direction. I just got on a platform. I thought I knew which direction the train was going. And rather than it taking me into Manhattan, which I was trying to go to, it took me further into Brooklyn and further away from the destination that I was ultimately trying to get to. So, see, you got to be aware of where the trains are headed, where their final destination is going to be, and only get on the trains that are going to serve you. Okay? So, we've been looking at some of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves over and over and over again. Things like, let's see, my thoughts are fact. That's what we did on the first week. The second week, we looked at this idea of like, I look dumb, or I'm worried about what these people are going to think about me. They're going to think I look so silly. Last week was all about this idea of things are always going to be like this. It's never going to change. That was ultimately the lie that we looked at and dismantled. And today I want to tackle one that's a little heavier, a little deeper, but one that I really think at its core will derail us faster than any of the other lies, except for maybe what we're going to talk about next week. But the lie that we are taking down today is, I'm a failure. Does that one hit? Now, maybe I'm a failure is not what you're telling yourself in your mind or telling yourself when you're looking in the mirror, but it starts to come through in other ways. It may not be the I'm a failure, but it might be I can't do anything right. I keep messing up. I'm never going to be able to do this. And you fill in the blank with whatever that this is. You know, I'm a terrible mom. I am really bad at my job. You know, like we start to tell ourselves these things that are not true, but ultimately, if we allow ourselves to continue to think that way, where is that going to lead us? It's not going to lead us to make more positive changes. It's not going to lead us to want to try harder the next day. It's not going to lead us down the road that is going to give us success. If anything, it's going to take us down this road that is really sad and really dark and depressing and, well, lonely and isolated too. I think if we tell ourselves we're a failure enough times, even if it has nothing to do with like our social circle or our relationships, it starts to spill into that, right? The way that you speak about yourself, and if you continue to tell yourself you're failing at life, you're going to stop trying at life. And that's a dangerous place to be. I think about the times that I have failed in my life. You're going to hate the homework that I give you at the end of this assignment, but I've already done it and I would never have you do anything that I wouldn't do. But just going through and thinking about the things that I have failed at in my life. And I'm not just talking about mistakes or poor decisions. I'm talking about things that like I chased after and did not accomplish. So if you know me, I played softball my entire life growing up and loved it so much. I was a pitcher and I'll admit, like I could throw hard. I could throw a killer rise ball. Like I just got so much joy out of it. And there was so much of me growing up, all of me that thought I would play for Team USA one day, that I would be in the Olympics. Now they're bringing like professional softball back. I thought that I would be a part of that. But it didn't happen. I went off to college. I chose the college that I wanted to go to. I didn't have any scholarship offers or anything like that. Didn't even consider going to a junior college. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a walk-on. I'm going to be that story that they tell at the World Series. And they're going to be like, just a walk-on freshman, just crushing it. Like that was going to be me. That was my game plan. I'm going to walk on to this team. Well, I tried out my freshman year, did not make it. It was me and one other girl, and she was so good. Like, I'm not surprised at all that they took her. And then I didn't give up then. Don't get me wrong. I failed once, but I wasn't going to fail. I was going to go back and try it again. So I went back my sophomore year and still did not make the team. The difference in the tryouts, though, is I really felt like I played well in the second tryouts, and I still didn't make it. Now, I took that as a sign of like, this isn't in the cards for you, and moved on to other things. Heartbroken. But it was a failure. And honestly, it was a failure in a sense of like, I failed myself. I felt like I probably should have gone a different route, you know, play a little junior college ball, then transfer over, do something. choosing the college I wanted to go to and then try to make the team probably wasn't the best strategy. But also, I put it on my shoulders to do this for my hometown as well, which sounds bananas. But there was something that I really idolized about being a success story from my very small town that I grew up in. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just a failure that I felt for myself, but I also felt it for my town. I felt it for my coach back in the day. I felt it for my dad, for crying out loud all the times that he sat on a bucket and caught for me and didn't know the first thing about pitching or softball, but learned everything he could, rented VHS tapes, consulted other dads that he worked with who had pitchers that were, daughters that were pitchers. Like, I felt like I was letting him down as well. I mean, I just had so much riding on these tryouts, and I didn't make the team, and it was hard. And I'll admit, there's parts of me that still feel that let down, that still feel that. And it's not that I still feel like I'm a failure and I can't do anything right, but it was just a big dream that I had, and I've had to rework my thinking of like, hey, Jess, maybe that just wasn't for you. And that's okay, because I see the way that God has led me in other ways. I see the opportunities that he's given me in other areas, in broadcast, in, podcasting and wanting to write a book and stuff like that. And it's not that I couldn't have done that stuff eventually, but it's like I've had to come to grips with the fact that that door closed. It doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It just means that I failed at that. I didn't make the team. I didn't play in college. And that's okay. Not a lot of people play sports in college, and very few get to play professionally. I also think about, other failures that I've had, even with this podcast, I walked away from it thinking that it was a failure because it wasn't, Ed Milet or Rachel Hollis or even Mel Robbins, with what she's built now. It wasn't what podcasting is today. And, I kick myself all the time for that, saying, why did I just walk away from that thinking that I had failed at it? I want to share these stories with you because, we all fail at things. We all walk away from things prematurely. We all put way too much pressure on ourselves to achieve things that maybe we're not supposed to be putting our focus on, but that doesn't mean that we ourselves are failures. We have to get past the failure. We have to get beyond the failure to learn from it, to grow from it, and to ultimately pursue what is next. Whether we make a pivot and dive back in, or we move to something else entirely and walk away from that thing that maybe God just closed that door on, It's tough to think. It's tough to get out of this idea of I'm a failure or I stink at this, I'm a terrible this, whatever that this is for you, because there are things around us that confirm those thoughts. Just like we've been talking about with all the other lies in this series, there are things around us that can confirm this lie to us. Things like imperfections in the way that we're showing up, like I said, mistakes that we make, unmet expectations. Oh my goodness. I think a lot of times we put the expectation on ourselves, which that's hard to get around too. You know what I mean? Like when you set an expectation for yourself, oftentimes it is so unbelievably unrealistic. And then when you don't meet that expectation, you throw your hands up and say, I give up. I'm not going to try anymore. I do this. I know several people around me do this. You probably do this. It's just human nature. And I feel like these days when we're scrolling through social media, we see everybody's highlight reel, and it's so easy to get wrapped up in this feeling of like, they've got it all figured out. They've got the ultimate blessing. They're so good at that. They're so talented at that. You're just looking at like what they want to show you, the story that they want to tell you. And even then, like I feel like we're seeing more and more people that are not afraid to be vulnerable, but they're so quick to be on the other side of that vulnerability. They're so quick to be like, yeah, I went through this really tough thing, but I got it figured out. I'm okay now. That's not always the case. But this lie, aside from being confirmed, it stems from, and its origin comes from, I think, a lot of things that we have in common. Ultimately, it's your track record. Let's just face it. If you are racking up L's, if you are letting yourself down, if you are breaking promises to yourself, it's going to be really tough for you to say, hey, I'm a winner. You know what I mean? But I want to caution you not to look at the losses and magnify them into something bigger than they actually are. Like, keep them in focus, keep them in perspective. This lie of I'm a failure also can come from words that are spoken over us, especially from people that are in authority or people that are they're very high esteemed by us. Think about teachers that, when you're a kid and you're in class, your teacher like has an influence on you. I had a teacher in high school that told me, did not ask me, he told me that I was going to be tutoring people in chemistry. And I was like, bro, I loved chemistry. I was in AP chemistry. I wanted to major in chemistry at one point, but teaching it, nah, that not what I was into. I ended up tutoring one student, and despite the fact that I didn't want to. And he actually ended up with a B in the class. It was great, and I got paid for it. It was even more awesome. But like, our teachers tend to have that influence on them, and it's great if it's encouraging and they're motivating you and they're pushing you and they're challenging you in good ways. But it's awful when it's the opposite of that. It's awful when you have somebody that is in an authoritative position or somebody with influence and they're telling you something's wrong with you. They're telling you you're not going to succeed. They're telling you that you're going to fail. You always mess this up. Like, you never show up. You never do what you're supposed to. Like, that just kind of sits with you, right? Especially if they're saying it over and over and over again. And I think about loved ones. I think about parents and okay, let me just stop for a second. Kids, you're really going to have to determine if your parent is being a disciplinarian, if your parent is being somebody who is trying to challenge you and help you get better, and if your parent is just being toxic. I think so often we're so quick to say that person's toxic or my parents are toxic or whatever, and they're not actually being toxic. They're just trying to be a good parent. But again, if they're tearing you down, if they are verbally abusing you, if they are making you feel like you're not worthy, you're less than, like you're a mistake, if they're speaking those words over you, my goodness, that's going to stick with you, because your parents are the ones that put you on this planet, for crying out loud, right? Like, they're the ones that are raising you. They're supposed to help you and lead you and guide you, not tear you down. I think also this the origin of this thought of I'm a failure also can come from fear of the unknown. Anytime you're trying something new, anytime you are stepping out and trying to pursue something that is really heavy on your heart, for me, writing a book and doing this podcast, those are heavy things. Like, those are a heavy lift, if you will. It's not that they're like emotionally heavy, but they're big and they're exciting, but they're also terrifying at the same time. And I think before we even start, we can get it in our head that we're not going to do it right, simply because we don't know. We don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do this podcast. I don't know. I mean, I know how to record it. Yeah. I know how to put it on the internet, but like, I don't know how to make it grow. I don't know how to take it to the next level. I got to figure that out. There's so much technology out there as well that I don't know a lot about. And these kids that are popping out these days, it's like in their DNA how to do this technology. I've never felt more like a boomer in my life. Writing a book, like I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get published. Luckily, I've got people that have set me up with their colleagues that are published authors, and I'm learning. I know there's this self-publishing thing, but like, recognizing that I don't know what I'm doing doesn't make me a failure. It just makes me a novice. And it's okay to be a novice. It's okay to be new at something. So this lie, we've identified it. We've found the origin of it. We have identified ways that it is confirmed in our lives, tempting ways that make it feel like this lie is actually true, but it's not. So how do we actually dismantle it? What are some things that we can have in our toolbox to remember as we move forward? Well, I think the biggest thing is just recognizing that failures are a part of life. It sounds so simple, and I could throw every cliche in the book at you right now, like fail forward, and it's not a failure if you learn from it, all sorts of stuff like that. But it's true. Like, failing is just, it's in our nature. It's in it's in this world. We are imperfect people. We didn't come into this world perfect beings. We won't leave this world perfect beings. Like, we live in a fallen world. And when it comes to God, we all fall short of his glory. We all fall short of what he intended for humans to be. He, before the fall of man, before, what happened in the garden with Adam and Eve, like, we were meant to walk with God. We were meant to commune with him. But that mistake of sin entering into the world separates us from God. And so we will never be able to be perfect. We will never be able to be everything that we were destined to be until we're standing in glory before our Father. That's not to say that we shouldn't try. That's not to say that we're awful and we're not perfect, but that's just to give us perspective of like, hey, we're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall. But by the grace of God, we have a creator that loves us, that is walking with us, that is holding our hand, and that when those moments come that we fail and fall, we can take those things to him. Isn't that a wonderful blessing? Isn't that a wonderful assurance that we have in this life, that we're not doing it alone? So just recognize that, like, life is hard, life is messy, life is imperfect. But it's also wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it's challenging, and it's exciting, and it's adventurous if you choose to let it be that. I also think that it's important for us to remember that regret will always be bigger than the fail. Oftentimes, we don't start on the things that we want to do in life. We don't take chances. We don't take risks. We don't attempt anything because we're so afraid of the fail. We're so afraid of messing up. We're so afraid of looking stupid in front of other people. We're so afraid of letting ourselves down or letting other people down that we never actually get started. We let the fear of failure become this big monster, right? But I'm going to tell you, there's a bigger monster out there, and it's the regret of not trying at all. Once you get into something, and even if you do slip and fall, it's like, okay, at least now I know what I'm dealing with. At least now I know that I tried and this didn't work. So again, I can pivot if I want to, or I can move another direction entirely. But at least you know, right? I am so afraid of getting to the end of my life and thinking, I didn't try that. I wish I would have. I could have. I should have. Like, just I'm living like this new life. I swear it's because I'm getting closer to 40, but like I'm starting to care so much less. And if you are in your teens, if you're in your 20s, if you're in your early 30s right now, I want to encourage you to grasp onto this now, okay? And if you've got that fire in you, if you've got that fire in your belly to try things and get out there and conquer the world, like, don't lose it. Life is going to throw things at you. Life is going to throw curveballs at you. Things are going to go awry. Things are going to go the way that you didn't want them to go, but don't let that derail you. Do not let it steal and rob that fire that is within you. I was such a go-getter when I was in college, man. I was trying all these different things. I went and lived in New York for a little bit. I worked for ESPN. Like I did so many different things, and I was fearless with it. And then it's like, I don't know if we just get more skin in the game or what, but it's like we lose, there's more at stake, right? We lose that gumption. And I want to encourage you not to lose that gumption. Don't worry about what people are going to think. Don't worry about not getting it right immediately. I think about this this quote from Ella Langley. She was on stage, and Ella's like the biggest thing on the planet right now. She's a country singer with a song. If I can nerd out on country music for a little bit, because I am a country radio broadcaster, she has had a #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 Songs chart, which is an all-genre chart, for 17 weeks. It is so hard for a country song to be in that #1 spot, let alone stay there. Not to mention, she's the first female to have that many weeks in that #1 spot with a song that's not like a holiday hit. She has broken a record that was set by Mariah Carey and by Whitney Houston by being in that #1 spot for 17 weeks now. Like, it's insane. And she is the first one to tell you, I did not do it right at the beginning. She made mistakes. She failed forward. She even took a month-long break just to like get herself back to a place of being centered, to spend time with Jesus, to spend time with her family, to get away from the spotlight, because she realized like fame was coming at her so fast and she couldn't handle it. I love that perspective. And she's in her 20s. Somebody around her probably said like, hey, let's just pump the brakes for a second. Otherwise this is going to crash and burn real quick. And I think that was very brave of her, but also she recognized like, yeah, I've made some mistakes, but this does not define me. And I think that's another thing that we have to remember if we're going to dismantle this lie of I'm a failure, is that the mistakes that you've made, the fails that you've had, the losses that you've taken, what has happened to you in your life is not who you are. First and foremost, your identity is in Christ alone, okay? He made you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are his masterpiece, okay? Never forget that. What happens in your life, what happens to you, is not who you are. You are God's chosen child, first and foremost. Hear me on that. Because when these mistakes start happening, because they will, when these fails start happening, because they will, and already have, and when people start chiming in with their opinions, when the noise becomes too loud, I want you to remember that no mistake, no fail that you have ever made can take the place of who you are, can become who you are. Stop wearing the experience as an identity, as a punishment for maybe what happened, as an excuse to not try again. You got to take that off. Like a jacket in the middle of July, get that off of you because you're sweating to death. It is so warm in Texas right now. Like it's awful. I cannot stand it. But I just want to remind you, like, whatever happens to you, like, you don't have to wear it for the rest of your life. Sure, there may be things that you have to do to make things right, depending on what happened. There may be some things that you have to go through to be stronger for the next time you try. There may be some moving parts here, but ultimately it is not your identity. You are not a failure. Hear me when I say that, please. You may have failed, but it is not who you are. Stop wearing that coat. Stop thinking that, because it's going to ruin your life. So the next time you start having these thoughts come into your mind of, I'm terrible at this, I'm an awful this, I'm a failure, I failed at this, there's no point in trying again, I would love for you to redefine failure. Here's what's interesting. When I looked up the definition of failure, it said this: a state or condition of not meeting a desired or intended goal. You're just missing the mark, right? Which, if you're a Christian, you know that sin just means you missed the mark. It's an archery term, right? But what I thought was interesting here is that in the very definition of failure are the words state and condition. Those are temporary words. Those are words that can be changed. You can change your state. You can change your condition. Conditions get better. Conditions can get worse as well, but conditions can always get better. Whatever state or condition you are in is not final. I find it so interesting that the very definition of failure has these temporary words used in the definition. Isn't that mind-blowing? The word itself, its own definition, does not mean final, period, end of story. Which means there's life on the other side of that failure. There's something happening on the other side of that failure. Remember that the next time you start thinking like, gosh, I'm just awful and I'm never going to be good at this and I always fail at this and I always mess this up. No. That's just your state right now. That is just a condition right now. That is not your forever state. That is not your forever condition, okay? You can move through it. I also want you to ask yourself when those thoughts start creeping up, even this week, because they probably will. I'm thinking about back to school season. I'm thinking about moms and dads sending their kids back to school. And, you start looking at other photos of other kids that are going back to school and you start thinking, oh, well, their clothing looks nice. Their hair looks like it's properly trimmed and ready to go for the school year. Oh, gosh, I must be an awful mom because I didn't do this. Maybe you didn't even take a back to school photo and suddenly you're feeling a certain way about it. Yeah, it sneaks up on you, right? Ask yourself, the things that you're saying about yourself, would you say that to your child? Would you say that to your mom, your dad? Would you say that to your spouse? Would you say it to your best friend? Would you say it to your dog? I'm a dog mom. He's my child. I would never, ever say mean things to him. But honestly, I think sometimes we just think things about ourselves that we would never think about the people that we love so much. The people that are most important to us, the people that we care about the most, the people that we want to see succeed in life, we would never say the things to them that we are thinking in our mind about ourselves. Am I right in saying that? Or would you? I don't know. I don't know what kind of relationships you've got. You would encourage your kids. You would help them along. You would tell them to try again. You would do that for your spouse. You would do that for your best friend. You wouldn't tear them down if they made a mistake or if they failed at something. You know what I mean? I also want you to ask yourself, is this a door closed? Or is this a chance for me to pivot and try it a different way? I think oftentimes when we start thinking we're a failure because of past experiences, we tend to just throw in the towel too quickly. And it's hard for us to determine whether or not this is worth trying a different way. Oftentimes, I do believe it's a redirection. Now, get enough failures in a row and you start wondering if it's a closed door, right? When I didn't make the softball team a second time, I started, praying about it and saying, God, am I wrong? Am I supposed to be doing something else? I love being at this university. I love, the fact that I'm in this environment. I feel called to be here at this school. And so it was a tough redirection for me, but one that I had to take before the Lord and be like, am I crazy here? Should I try again? And only have 2 years left to play? What do I do? But I think it would be so good for us to take those moments of failure and use them as intel, use them as an opportunity to figure out what is next. Rather than close up shop completely, it's okay. Is this a closed door? And do I need to find another door? Or is this a, hey, your attempt to try it this way wasn't great, but if you do a little more research here, you might find a better way to do it. I think about this all the time with working out. I wanted to be a person that was diligent and disciplined and consistent in the gym about 6.5 years ago. And what I was doing 6.5 years ago is not what I'm doing today. I've learned different things. I've learned different workouts. I've learned what I like to do in the gym because surprisingly, there are things that I like to do in the gym. I think sometimes people don't work out because they try one type of workout and they're like, this isn't for me. And then they never go back, but trying different things, learning different things, being able to say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to learn. I'm open and willing to learn. Failure can be such an opportunity for you to do that. So rather than just shutting down completely, I would encourage you that when those negative thoughts start coming in, that you take them before the Lord, ask Him for proper direction, and then open yourself up to what could be next. Don't just shut down and give up entirely. So your homework this week, before we get into that, I want to remind you about the verse in the Bible, I believe it's in Romans, there is no shame nor condemnation for those that are in Christ. I think oftentimes when we are failing or making mistakes or doing things that we know we shouldn't be doing, it's like we can feel so much shame. We can feel so condemned and we hide from God when there's no shame or condemnation, okay? There's not. He loves you. He cares for you. He wants you to bring those things to Him. There's nothing too big or challenging or awful for Him. He can put things back together again and make them more beautiful and more strong than they've ever been before. I challenge you to do that, okay? To take things to God and let Him change and renew those things, okay? Even if it's just yourself. Let's just put it that way. So this week, your homework, I want you to write down some failures. I know you don't want to, but I think when we really sit down and do this, we start to realize that the failures weren't that bad. Don't blow them out of proportion. Be honest about them. Don't minimize them either. Be honest about them. But I think oftentimes when we actually sit down and really think about what actually happened, oh, I'm not that big of a failure. Oh, okay. Yeah, that wasn't as big of a deal as I made it out to be. Or you might even think, wow, I can't believe I allowed myself to be so upset about something that happened so many years ago. You know what I mean? Oftentimes I think that we make the failure bigger than it actually is. We put too much emotion into it. I also want you to write down your wins. I don't think we celebrate wins as often as we should. I think for me, sometimes it's like, oh, that's a pride thing. I don't want to be prideful. It's okay to recognize areas that you've done good in, because then that directs you and encourages you and helps guide you in the next big thing that you want to do, the next thing that you want to accomplish. I also want you to get around people that you love, that you trust, your inner circle, and be vulnerable with them. If there's something that you're struggling with, if you're feeling really down about something, a mistake that you made, something that you feel like you should have done that you didn't do, or if you just feel like you're failing in a certain area of your life, get around people that you love and allow them to speak life into you. Allow them to encourage you. Allow them to love on you and be like, hey, no. I say this to my friends or even to my husband, like when they're just getting down on themselves. I'm like, hey, it's my best friend you're talking about. We don't talk that way. Or hey, that's my husband, okay? No. You don't talk about my husband like that, okay? Thank you so much. Like, have people like that in your life and allow them to be those people for you, where they can encourage you and be like, I think you're being a little over dramatic about this, or, just give it another try. Or, oh, have you tried this? Sometimes just getting around other people can open up different paths of knowledge and ideas. And suddenly you've got fresh new perspective and new motivation to give it another go. And finally, I want you to do something out of your comfort zone. I want you to do the thing that you've been putting off, the thing that for whatever reason you're holding yourself back. Maybe it's because you tried it once before and it didn't go so well, so you just put it on the shelf. Could be a hobby, could be a habit that you're trying to establish. It could be a place that you want to go to that you, for whatever reason, have ruled yourself out of. Whatever it is, just find something that you can do this week. I don't want you saying 6 months down the road because you will forget. It'll be the holidays and you won't do it. Try to find something that you feasibly can do this week out of your comfort zone and just go do it, please. Even if you have to do it alone, just do it. Go at it with an open mind. Go at it with curiosity and humility and just enjoy it. The more often that you can do that, even if it goes bad, it's like that's just training your confidence muscle. Because if it goes well, then, oh yeah, we're going to try something like that again, or we're going to keep this going. But also, like, if you fail at it, it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Or, oh, that didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, but now I know. I don't have to regret it anymore. I don't have to think about it anymore because I gave it a try. And you know what? It wasn't my thing, and that's okay. Because now I'm going to try this other thing. You see how just like getting those reps in of trying new things really does like build up your confidence, endurance? We need that if we're going to dismantle this lie of I'm a failure. So we are going to continue this next week with the biggest lie, and I think the most important lie that we need to dismantle, the one that is probably going to be the heaviest. So buckle up for that, and I'll see you next week.